Welcome to Power Hour, where the editors of Power Sports Business interview the movers and shakers of the industry. This episode is brought to you by Synchrony.
Hi, everybody. It's Brendan from Power Sports Business here with a special guest, Mark Sheffield, who I think most of you are aware of and know and maybe follow him on LinkedIn and have met him at conferences and trade shows. So we got him in his busy podcast schedule. He cut out some time for us, which we really appreciate. So Mark, give us a little background. We know you from, you've been a long time PSB contributor. You've, written a lot of articles. You're part of NPDA. You're semi-retired, but I see you more now than when you were actually working full time. So, give us a little update.
Yeah, not to take 60 minutes talking about all the crazy stuff that I've done, but, I was born in England in 1970, a little bit north of London. And my grandfather worked for British Aerospace, and my father passed away when I was young. So we got to move around the world with him and lived in Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates. And if you've ever seen like the big palm fronds that they have, they built in Dubai, not Dubai. I can't even remember the emirate off the top of my head, but they built those palm fronds. I literally went to school a mile away from there, and we used to have this compound we used to live in had this big sand lot, like 20 acres across from us, and usually in the afternoons there would be camels walking across that sand lot. So it was cool. And then we ended up moved to Texas, and I served 4 years in the U.S. military. I joined up a few days after I graduated from high school and got out of the military on a Monday, started working at a small Yamaha dealership in Killeen on Tuesday, and kind of worked my way through the industry. Spent some time at America's Power Sports, which is now essentially absorbed by Ride Now. And in 2006, Mark Woods called me and said, "Hey, I want to buy a store. Do you want to come manage this thing? And I'll give you some sweat equity in it." And so I went and moved to New Braunfels, and we bought this little small dealership that sold, I think, 345 units that first year. And, now we consistently sell a couple of thousand every year at this point in time. And then I did that for about 12 years. And I was like, the day-to-day is just not, it was fun building it. It wasn't fun managing it, at least not for me. And so I decided in, I guess it was 2016 to kind of what I called semi-retire, which was just work less than 80 hours a week. So left there, said I was going to take 6 months off. And I think 2 weeks later, I was facilitating my first 20 group meeting. Did that for about 9 years and just wrapped that up this summer. So not doing the 20 group thing anymore. And I appreciate all the opportunities from all the other 20 group providers out there, but I'm done. I'm out of that game.
Right. They're all like, "Oh, he's on the market. Let's get him."
Obviously there's a shortage of 20 group moderators, and if I could do it, I think there's probably a lot of people that could do it, but obviously there's not a lot of people who want to do it. But it was an incredible experience. I met some of the best dealers in the country. I learned more than I would have ever learned doing anything else. I mean, there's not many people who get paid for 9 years to go and get an education.
Right.
It's just not really a thing. And then, over the last 5 years, I've joined a couple of boards. I'm on the Texas Motorcycle Dealer Association, which is a great organization. I think 55 dealers in Texas who are on that. On the NPDA, so national organization. I think we just cracked 400 members on that, and got kind of a lot of things that we're working on. So there's a lot of needs in the industry. Somehow I ended up on the board of a public company, which is really, really weird to me because I'm like, I don't own a suit or a tie, and I'm sitting in these meetings with all these people who are kind of care about what other people think, and I'm like, I'm a t-shirt kind of guy, and I got jeans on. And, one time I stood up, I still had my pajamas on, and I was like, well, I'm kind of professional. Yeah, I'm not going to the bathroom while I'm on the meetings or anything like that. There's no toilet flushing in the background, but that was kind of weird to do that. And then since I wrapped up the 20 group game, I had a ton of opportunities And I've decided to take on a couple of those. So not really coming out public and talking about what I'm doing at this point in time, but one of them is going to be really good for me. And one of them is going to be really good for dealers in the power sports industry. So working with a company that literally has 3,500 of the power sports dealers in this country as their client. And so it's going to be good. I will start probably talking about that early next year, and I'll be looking for help from industry players. And so excited to be able to expound on that a little bit more when it comes around. But other than that, this is what I do. It's my third podcast today.
Third today. Well, and I know you're kind of active on doing a podcast with a partner that you were talking about. What can you tell us a little bit about that podcast?
Yeah, that's Kyle from Vision AST. So those of y'all that don't know what they do, they have a system that integrates with Lightspeed, extracts data out of Lightspeed every hour, and then they take all of your metrics in the system and then turn it into a dashboard and usable metrics that dealers can utilize to manage their business. And so I had met Kyle 3-4 years ago and just liked what they were doing. And I had actually done a lot of what he's doing. I had done myself for our own dealership at Wood Cycle Country. And I taught myself some SQL programming and built all these tools in Google Sheets. And yeah, I'm not even a closet nerd. I'm a card carrying nerd. So I'm happy. I got a great, if you have 2 extra minutes at the end of this, I'll tell you my favorite nerd story. But I built all that. And so when I'm doing this 20 group thing and I'm showing dealers what's possible and everybody's like, can you do that for me? And I did it for a few dealers. And then I was like, I don't have the time to do this. And so I started looking for somebody else, and Kyle and his company do that. And so he kind of became my go-to where I was sending people. And he asked me for maybe a year to do a podcast with him, and kind of my last year as a 20 group facilitator, I was pretty busy and didn't have the time. But when that finished up, I was like, yeah, I could make the time to do it. And, it's kind of fun.
You hadn't done podcasts before. I can imagine a lot of people, well, now podcasts, everybody wants to do them. But it's like, I feel like you would be a natural podcast type person.
I disagree with you for a couple of reasons. One, my accent from having lived all over the world, I tend to speak fast, and I don't think I speak as clearly as a lot of people can understand. And I kind of get that a lot. And so, I don't feel like I've got a radio voice. Like I do some stuff with Brian Tierney over at Lightspeed, and one of these days I'm going to go out and buy like a big Elvis hair, because he's got like perfect hair. I want to out hair him at some point in time. But that guy's got a radio voice. I mean, he's like you. Yeah, he's like you could imagine him up on the stage doing a TED Talk or something like that.
It's like Jacob Berry. I did one with. He's got a radio voice, and I'm like, dude, but how can I like copy that voice? Just that baritone kind of. Yeah, I wish I had that. I always say I have a face for radio and a voice for print. So it's a bad combination all the way around. But hey, here we are, and I do a podcast now.
It's been really good. Our format is a little bit wonky. I mean, we're trying to do 10-minute episodes. We fail pretty miserably at that, and
it's hard.
We don't
10 minutes. Really?
I would say it's almost impossible at this point in time, unless you want to talk about nothing. You're like, hey, next podcast is next week. Good luck. We'll see you then.
It's like you just jump right into it, and there's no like, hey, how you doing? What's up? Yeah, there's no any of that. It's like, 10 minutes goes by quick. So
yeah, but we don't really edit our podcast, and we just wrapped up. We did an interview with David Baker from VRP, so that'll be coming out in a couple of weeks. And nice. I think it was good. But the other thing too is that I just don't like to hear myself speak, and I probably should to improve. But I have never once listened to a podcast that I participated in.
Well, I'll tell you a little secret. I don't really listen to mine either. I will go through them very quickly at high speed to make sure there's no real dubs or mess ups. But I make sure when they edit at, back in the home office, because I'm in Akron, they're in Minneapolis. I'm like, just listen to make sure it's not terrible, But I do know, like, okay, if there's a spot, oh, we gotta cut. But honestly, we don't really. We're like you. We just there's not enough time to edit every little. And if you got into that, it's game over already. So
I would not be surprised if there's like an industry drinking game at this point in time where they're like, every time Sheffield says or like that you got to do a shot. And I mean, that would be good for the alcohol industry and probably bad for people's livers and their healthcare plans.
Yeah, that could be same with me, man. And so on our audio, we do ours part audio, part video, so it goes wherever you want. But the audio portion, our Reba back at the home office, she takes out all the odds and ums. I'm like, oh, I feel bad for her. You got to sit through all that.
Well, we figured out we tried to do that like the first 2 episodes, but we've got what we call the pod clock, which is like a clock in the background. And so, it's got a countdown because we were trying to originally, you say 10 minutes is impossible. We tried to do 6 minutes at the start. And that was really, I don't know where I came up with that number, but bad call on my part. But yeah, when he was trying to edit them out and you're like, the clock is like, and you're like, no. So yeah. So now you just got to hear me say and like, and know that I get madder at myself every time I say one of those 2 things. So I'm really working on that.
Well, let's shift gears here real quick because I want to talk about your latest article that you just sent us, and where you're talking about gamifying dealership operations. And you use the example, which I thought was pretty funny, about your wife driving her hybrid RAV4, which I've driven electric vehicles. The first time I drove one was with a Ford deal up in Cleveland, and I'd never driven a hybrid. And they said, okay, we're doing a game. We're going to see who can keep it in the green, electric for the longest. And immediately right off the bat, I'm just driving it like a gas car, and I'm like heavy footed, like taking off. The minute you put your foot in the throttle, he's like, you got to treat it like there's an egg under your foot. I'm like, that's not how I drive. I'm like mashing it to the floor, and you're the smooth driver. So apparently your wife is sort of like the on off, probably more like me, like drives it a little hard and stops hard and all that stuff.
I was thinking when I wrote that article that it was only ever going to be in print on PSB. So we might possibly, she'll probably see this podcast. So maybe, if we want to refer to as future past tense or whatever, right. Maybe my future ex-wife, if we're really going to go down this road.
You said a lot of good things about her, though. I'll put it that way. You did say a lot of nice things. So,
my wife, and for everything that she does good, driving as the passenger, I would rather go back to Iraq. And and not even like a cool new gun. Give me something from World War II. So single shot Mauser or something like that. Yeah, send me back to Iraq before you put me in the passenger seat of her car. And she really historically has known 2 things: accelerate and brake. And I think sometimes based on the maintenance we had to do on her car that she was doing both at the same time. So it was a scary situation, and I do firmly believe that the floorboards on her last car on the passenger side, that they were kind of bowed out a little bit, because I was always looking for imaginary pedals as I was sitting in the passenger seat. And it's I don't want to ruin the article for everybody. I don't want to kind of take the
and by the time
take the luster off of it.
We'll be close. So this is going to be in the January issue, which by the time, it'll be very close. So we won't ruin the ending for everybody, but I do think that there's a lot of similarities between how you're gamifying a system and how you're looking at metrics and how you're measuring the metrics in your dealership, right? Like, real time versus like past tense, as you might say.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to what I was talking about with those dashboards that we were building at Woods, and then, kind of what Kyle is doing. And, one of the things that I learned maybe 6 to 7 years ago, when I started doing some of this integration with Lightspeed, and not sponsored by Lightspeed, but
Right. Yeah.
appreciate the little Yeti knockoff. So, that's good. But, one of the things that I learned, and Lightspeed has this system called 3PA, which is third party access. And not a lot of people even know about it, but, I taught myself how to use it. And essentially you can get all of your data out of Lightspeed automatically. You don't have to run reports. You don't have to do anything. It just gives you access to the database. And so I built those systems to extract that data out of there. And then I kind of had my own little database, and I'm like, what am I going to do with this now that I've done kind of the nerdy part of figuring out how to get it out of there? And so I was like, well, I'm going to make some dashboards for my guys that everybody can look at. These aren't going to be limited to just managers or the owner looking at the P&L. And this is going to be, I'm going to focus on what I think is going to move the needle. And so, the example is the sales department. And so, what I did originally was I just took, for every month, it kind of builds automatically, and your top salesperson who sold the most units is at the top of the list, and they've all got access to that. And so, I'm not saying the guy at the bottom sucks, but the guy at the bottom doesn't want to be there. He wants to move up.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of stores, when do the salespeople see that stuff? They have a meeting once a week, and the sales manager comes out. He's like, yeah, you're top, you're second, you're third. My guys got that every hour. And so I saw what I did there. And then we started doing it with finance, and, what's your per unit sold and what's your penetration on the different products. And then we actually started taking that finance data and giving that to the salespeople as well, and saying, okay, salesperson A, you're doing the best with ESC, but salesperson B is doing the best with tire and wheel. What's this guy doing? And so, the power of giving that data to the salespeople, having it update automatically, and then seeing how their behaviors changed on the fact that nobody wants to be at the bottom, game changer.
Right. So, that's true. Nobody wants to be at the bottom,
No.
A little story is like I worked on an IndyCar team and helped with the data acquisition. I wasn't the engineer, but I was sort of the junior engineer. So I helped, and data acquisition was basically all the little sensors on the car, which we had hundreds of them, would pull data like movements. And then you take those movements. Okay, moving this much. What does that mean? It's like you can extract the data. You could get all this data, but if you don't know what it means or how it correlates to anything, it's almost junk, But the cool thing is you could overlay it. Once you start understanding these overlays, you could take one driver and another driver, like if you had 2-driver team, you could overlay their track maps and what they're doing in the car in certain corners. Like, this guy's faster here, what's he doing? You just overlay that and go, oh, I see what he's doing. It's not always 100% like, oh, it can be done the same way, but you're like, why is he doing that? So then you have to start looking into the data even further. But it's interesting to be able to do that in a business type setting and a sales type set in more real time, and I think a lot of people, and if you see you're on the bottom, I mean, most sales guys are competitive, right? They don't want to be at the bottom. They're like, what can I do to get ahead here?
Yeah, I don't have issues giving the team data. And, I guess I think that's just one more thing that we can do, because, the reality is that, a lot of times, like an owner or a department manager, they get frustrated because they're like, well, John's not motivated, or he's not doing this. And I always got to remind him, I'm like, not everybody's built to be a manager. I mean, in the end, you go to McDonald's, there's going to be some guy who is just Guinness Book World Record best fry salter in the country. So he can put salt on fries.
He is one mad salter, just
better than anybody else. But
the right
promote
amount.
That guy. Yeah, you promote that guy to the next level, and he's got to manage one person and train one person how to put salt on the fries, and he completely cracks and he loses.
You see this a lot with salespeople. Like, they're good. I actually worked for a publisher who was one of our top salespeople who became publisher. He was the worst publisher, but a damn good salesman. You know what I mean? Like, he couldn't handle. He didn't manage people. Hey, kitty. Wait,
Sorry,
is this your
sorry about
helper
that.
here?
Yeah, she likes to participate in
Oh yeah.
most of my
The
meetings.
cats like doing the Zoom. I just saw something on LinkedIn or something where this girl does a Zoom call where her cat now just sits beside her and stares directly at the screen.
I saw that one. Well, this one, she's coming up on 21 years old. So she came out
Wow.
of, yeah, she came out of New Orleans during Hurricane Rita and Katrina.
Wow.
Her and her brother, and she's had cancer and lived through that.
Oh
And
my
her
gosh.
brother,
That's amazing.
unfortunately, is not with us anymore. But the problem is, about 6 months ago, she went deaf,
Oh,
and I will walk down the stairs some morning, and she'll come around the corner and meow at me, and I've literally dropped things. I'm like, scares the crap out of me. But
oh
no,
my.
I don't have any kids. I got 3 cats, and I would do anything for them.
Yeah.
Whatever it takes,
Oh
whatever
yeah,
it
the
costs, I don't
animals.
care.
I'm saying I've got dogs. Well, we're down to one dog now, and I like cats, but unfortunately my dog, the dogs we've had lately are not compatible with cats in any way. So
I think they got to grow up together. I think
I
you
think
got to.
that's what I'm thinking. You have to have them or they have to be used to each other somehow. But now it's like our dog sees a cat outside and it's like, poof, she's gone,
Yeah,
chasing it. So, but
yeah. Can't win them all.
no.
But
Well, let's go on to I was just reading today. Now, if anyone hasn't read, Mark's LinkedIn posts and page, I recommend it highly. I look at it all the time. I feel like every time I look at it, I'm like, man, you have so much insight in there, and so it's incredible to me how many things, and it's what you've kind of pulled out. And now you've done one with the BMO Capital Markets report for 2026 outlook. Do what were some of the things that jumped out to you that you think that dealers could take away for 26?
I would couple of things. One, BMO has become just a great partner of mine, and as far
Yeah,
as
that's right. Yeah.
yeah, as far as giving me information and asking questions and being able to kind of help me learn things, and I think that the insight that they've given me into the industry from a different level has been kind of a game changer, and so I really like being able to get that data and then kind of analyze it and disseminate it. But I would say that, in summarizing what they said about 2026 is that it's essentially going to be a flat year is kind of their thoughts that, there's potentially going to be some benefits from reduced interest rates and some other things that hopefully will happen next year, some benefits to the tax changes and other things like that. But, the reality is that our economy has got a lot of issues today. And, it's, we just talked about it on the last podcast we did. It's kind of weird that you got 50% of the people in this country who, have got record levels of income right now. Their 401ks and their stock plans.
Is it 50%? Is it that high? I mean,
No, it's not that high, but
but yeah, there's a good percentage, I think, that in that upper echelon. So basically, if you've got money, if you're probably making more money, if your 401k is doing better, your investments, those kind of guys are doing well, and it seems like that's driving premium sales in certain aspects.
Oh yeah, it's I don't have access to all the data that I used to have access to, but kind of looking at the percentage of deals that are being financed today, and that number has increased just a little bit, but it's not that much different than it was a year or two ago. And so
yeah,
you look at, in the industry, a mixed power sports and motorcycle dealer, depending on what brands they carry, their average selling price is probably somewhere around $25,000 a sale. And you got half those customers who are coming in just going, I'm just going to give you a check and pay for it. And how quick can you get me out of here?
right.
And then you've got the other side, the what I said, the 50%, which is probably really the 80% of people who are really struggling in today's economy. I mean, they're making decisions every month about, am I going to buy food for my kids? Am I going to pay the electric bill? Am I going to pay my rent? Am I going to pay my insurance on my car? And, it's tough.
Yeah, it is tough. But those are good used buyers in some ways. I feel like, well, I think they're still enthusiasts, even if they may not be actively participating right now. I think that if things are better for them, they will be more involved in the market. I think a lot of them are, if they have a unit, they're holding on to it, or, maybe just trying to keep it up and do what they can. But you're right. I mean, with food costs going up and things, I think the interesting thing that I read a while back was, the difference in like the boomers, I'm Gen X. I don't know what if you're in that, but you're,
I'm 55.
Well, I'm older than you. Dang it. I'm always the old guy.
I got a lot of gray hair coming in now.
Yeah, I got like very little hair now. So, but the way I see it is of course the boomers, we've talked about it a bunch, aging out, are they, are they done buying motorcycles? I don't know if all of them are they buying three-wheelers? Are they trading them for side-by-sides? Maybe. But it seems like it might be affecting the heavy cruiser market a little bit. And then you've got like on the polar opposite end, the boomers, of course, have money. They can be the ones going in, buying that, 25 grand check, here you go, or trade in something and then, that's still got good value on it and throw a check in. So they don't necessarily have to finance. But then you got the young kids, the Gen Zs, that they're struggling. They're struggling a lot from what I read. And I feel like the Gen Zs are like the future of the market. We can't lose them, or are we already losing them? I don't know.
Well, I think you kind of, you brush on a big problem that we've got today is that, if somebody's struggling financially today, it doesn't mean that they can't dream. And it doesn't mean that they can't think about, when I've got money or when things are better, that these are the things that I'm going to want to do. And I think where we fail as an industry is that those customers come into the dealership or they submit a lead and they don't get credit approved. And what happens? The dealership just kind of, they're gone. Instead of playing the long game, instead of actually getting that customer into the CRM, instead of, reaching out 6 months from then and saying, hey, you were in here and today's your birthday and just want to wish you a happy birthday. We ghost those customers. And so when they do get money at some point down the road and they're ready to buy something, maybe they're not even thinking about us anymore because they didn't have a good experience. And
right.
I think so many dealers just kind of lose sight of the fact that I hear all the time dealers ask me, they're like, how far ahead of the power sports industry is the automotive industry? And how much more developed are they than power sports? And the reality to me is that they're better at certain things, but I don't think the automotive industry is any more decades ahead of the power sports industry, because to me, any industry that has worked its way down to making the bare minimum on the automobiles and the vehicles that you're selling, to me, it was a race to the bottom.
Power sports has become like, because the margins on the bikes are so small. It's same with cars though. Margins are small. You have to maximize your service, right? You've got to maximize service, maximize your custom, your parts and accessories and things like that. And make profit on pre-owned is what, I think you're going to make bigger margins on pre-owned, but selling a new bike, if you can keep a customer in that life cycle where they're buying a new vehicle every 3-4 years, that's not bad. I mean, I guess 3 years is probably ideal.
Yeah, I've kind of heard different metrics, but I kind of 3 years, I think, for the customer who's in on a trade cycle. But, I just go back to what I said, that I think that, well, or kind of the road that I was going down, what I was talking about is that I think that we've got a lot of people in the industry now who are clearly just looking at it as a business. And, whether those of us who are enthusiasts in the industry and really kind of care to play the long game and are okay selling a small bike today and not making a whole lot of money on it because we know that customer, if they have a good experience, is going to come back and buy down the road. I mean, I think that kind of that enthusiast operator who was willing to play that game, we're becoming fewer and further between at this point
Well,
in
they're
time.
selling. I mean, you look at all again, another Harley dealer just sold. Other Harley dealers are closing. There's a lot happening right now. I feel like consolidation and other dealer groups, buying, trying to buy up dealers, and they're not necessarily, and nothing against, I mean, there's automotive groups that know how to sell bikes and that have enthusiasts, right? So I'm not necessarily putting down the automotive side, but they're definitely more of the corporate type, whereas you got the mom and pops, a lot of those are gone or going away quickly. Those guys that were enthusiasts and did stuff on the handshake, the old fashioned way, maybe didn't use, as many systems as we have today because they've been doing it for so long. But now it's gotten to the point where you need to rely on some of those systems, right?
Yeah, and I've seen the financials on this, not once, not twice, but many, many times. And, we see all these car groups that are coming in and buying power sports dealers right now. And in 75% of the cases, they will sell more units and they will net less money. And it's because they come in and they're like, those power sports guys are idiots and they don't know what they're doing. And they don't understand the most fundamental difference between power sports and automotive. And that is that automotive is transactional and power sports is relational. And those are two very separate businesses. And if you come in and in 75% of the cases, if you try to run a power sports store like an automotive store, you'll lose money. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, they're different style for sure. You need a car, you don't need a bike. It's an emotional buy. It's also, you buy from people you like. I think even on the auto side, you buy from people you like, but that can go in a lot of different ways. I hear so many stories. Oh, I'll never buy from them again. They're terrible. They kept me in locked me in the
F&I box
for like 8 hours, or whatever it is. And, and I think that we need to be able to keep the enthusiast fun side of it up front and center, of what we do. But like you said, we'll probably still make more. I think it's interesting when you say we're making more on those deals if you compare apples to apples than the automotive guys, because they're looking at numbers. Probably, well, we can move this out and blah blah blah.
Yeah, I mean, last thing anybody wants to see walking into a motorcycle dealership is a guy walking up to them wearing a tie. Come on,
That's a great idea. I'm gonna wear a tie next time.
Look, all right, we're gonna end this podcast pretty quick, but
I don't even own it.
No, I mean, it's just, it's so stupid. I mean, I feel bad when I go buy a new car and some little idiot 19-year-old kid, hey, how can I help you? What are you going to buy today?
Oh, yeah.
Let me tell you about this new $100,000 truck we just got in. And he's got his tie on and it's 110 degrees in Texas and he got sweat pouring out of every pore in his body. And yeah, I mean, you could wring him out and get some salt water out of him. Yeah, it's just freaking nuts. And I'm like, this is not, don't bring your auto BS to the power sports industry because we don't want any part of it. And you're taking a good thing and destroying it.
Yeah, absolutely. But on the flip side, and I will play a little devil's advocate, I don't like going into a dealership where it seems like you have to be in the club, like somebody wrote about the Dynabro. Well, he may look the part, whatever. I want to be able to feel welcomed when I go in. I don't need the fake, Friday's flair welcome, but I just want to be like, hey, acknowledged at least, and be like, hey, I could be a real customer, even though I look like, I probably belong on the streets, But,
when we did our last big renovation 10 years ago, and we expanded our showroom at Woods, and we were figuring out where to put what I call the sales desk, and everybody else wants to call the sales tower, but I hate that industry term. And I can't tell you how many hours that we spent trying to figure out what the optimal height of that sales desk was so that they could see everything that was going on. But so when a customer came up, you weren't looking down on them. And I mean, that perception was so very, and I guess, you talk about being in the club, and so many dealers kind of get stuck on all this industry term. I got full pop, or he was in the F&I box. And I guess I hate all that stuff. I really, we had like the 10 deadly words that would probably wouldn't get you fired, but you would be out in the corner of the showroom with a long brush cleaning cobwebs out of the corners if you use one of those words.
Yeah.
It's not a good look when you got guys that are just acting like, this customer doesn't know anything, so we're not going to treat him with respect. That's a problem.
They don't look like they'll buy anything, or, you hear it a lot. I used to hear it a lot more, like women walking into the showroom like, oh, they're not a customer, they're just maybe buying, and I think that has changed too. We're seeing a lot more demographic changes, and a lot more women riders now, a lot more new riders coming in because the market is shifting. You see a lot more the mix of bikes coming. You're seeing a lot more small displacement bikes, beginner bikes, what we would call beginner bikes. And so, is the mindset going to have to shift a little bit? I don't know.
You think about, what you just said, though, that, not only females entering the industry, but you think about when a husband and wife come in and they're sitting down at the desk with one of your salespeople, and your salespeople is talking only to the male. And it would just drive me nuts. I would see that at the store, and it would be like, so you got an emergency phone call, pick up, and friggin' you pick up the phone.
A smart one would know that you got to really convince the wife to that if you make it good with the wife, happy wife, happy life. Yeah, no, I've seen. As a matter of fact, I've helped. On the car side, I've been the decoy husband for people because I know on sales and all that, and they would be like, can you come with me to help me buy a car? And I would, then at first they would like talk to me, but then, my friend would do all the talk, then they'd start realizing, oh, well, it's her car. She's buying it really. And I would just sit there like, okay.
I just went through, we just bought a new, you read the article, you'll kind of see what we bought. And the dealership did a great job, but you could kind of tell that the salesperson we were working with was technology challenged because, sometimes my wife was emailing them and sometimes I was emailing them. And he would just, there were a couple of times where my wife asked a question and he would email me back the response. And I'm I was just like, it's kind of,
that's not good.
In the end, they did a good job.
And system, like their DMS, like, it comes in, it's under this name or this, we're just going to, I don't know. And I know that, one other thing before I shift gears, I know I don't want to go too far off subject with things, but just talking real quickly, I know that, speaking of DMS and financing stuff, but there was that data breach, for 100 credit. What is your take on that? What is, I know they're trying to, they're going to have a webinar here to talk about it, but cybersecurity, I feel like, we had CDK earlier. That was earlier this year, I think, or last.
No, that's more than 2 years ago that the CDK breach happened.
Oh,
yeah, it literally. No, it was literally. I read something about that a couple of months ago that the 2-year deadline to file lawsuits was just coming up. So yeah, it's right at a couple of years since the CDK thing happened.
Man, that shows how much my brain is all squished together. But some of these things like the cyber security stuff, now to their credit, they are out front of it and having webinar talking about it. But it was, from what I understand, an API third party vendor that kind of got in there and extracted data. How scary is stuff like that? Can stuff like that happen? Is there ways that dealers can protect themselves? What is your take?
I want to be careful what I say here. But I would tell you one of the key things that I learned from watching this entire deal play out over the last couple of weeks is that when you have something like this happen that is impacting not tens or hundreds of thousands of people, but millions of people, hire a public relations firm and dial in your messaging, because 700 credit has not been on point on this front. And, the first webinar that I saw, I feel like the guy got noticed like 2 minutes before that webinar that,
Oh,
hey, we,
right.
yeah, we need you to tell
You just
all of
heard
our
about it.
customers, yeah, you just tell these 3 million people that we gave them their social security number out and published it on the internet.
Right.
And it was like, yeah, I think he got 2 minutes notice because, he's straightening up and there's like, some mess on his desk and things like that. And then he's like, well, go to this. Well, let me share my website with you and go here and click on this. And, and I think this will happen when you do that. And I was like, oh man, not a good look. So hire a PR firm. This 700 credit deal is going to play out for a long time. You talked about the CDK deal.
Yeah.
And, I think one of the things that not a lot of people are aware of is that, CDK suffered the data breach and we don't know exactly what happened or why, but auto dealers who utilize CDK are getting involved in lawsuits and have been involved in lawsuits and class action litigation because they chose to do business with CDK. And even though CDK was the one that had a broach, and I think the same thing's probably going to happen with the 700 credit breach. And there's a lot of power sports dealers that utilize 700 credit. And, maybe depending on the state, you got some tort reform that's happened and maybe some of this frivolous stuff doesn't happen. But even if you think that you're not going to have any exposure to this, don't be surprised to get a registered letter in the mail sometime in the next 18 months saying, hey, we need to see all of your records.
Right.
It could happen and it could be expensive. So,
because they'll say like, well, we got the, even though it was through CDK, for instance, it came from your dealership, the customer was the record came from your dealership. So therefore we hold you responsible.
Yeah. Where exactly did it happen? But just the fact that you chose to do business with them and, I haven't seen that they're going to indemnify dealers on this at this point in time. So
I'm going to have to tune into I haven't seen the webinar yet, but it was one of those things where I wasn't sure where to go. You're like, okay, let's see what's going on here. And then all of a sudden I saw the NPDA was going to do the webinar. So they've teamed up with NADA, NPDA, and others to try. But, I know CDK, I believe it was like a ransom type thing, where they had to pay. And I don't know what this is. So, but
what it sounds like to me is not having inside knowledge, but just talking to people who know people who know people who know people, and probably saw something on some website. But to me, what it sounds like, when you put information into a website, is that information gets passed to a computer, another server. And it sounds like to me that one of those servers in that chain was not encrypting the data that it was receiving and passing on to the next server. And so there was this pathway where all of your PII was all in plain text. And so it sounded like someone was able to figure that out and access that. So it's not good. At this point in time, though, the reality is if you live in America and you got a social security number, there's 10 different companies and people and bad actors who have your data. I mean, somebody's had my social security number for years at this point in time. 3 or 4 times a year, they try to open a Discover card, and I got every credit bureau locked down because I'm like, I don't need any more credit cards. It kind of keeps me good. So I'm not going out and
I've been aware of, I've had my credit card stolen, just going to gas stations and learn not to use my debit card at, some skimmers or whatever. But we've had multiple stuff like that. I've had other, similar things where they got your card information. And, it is one of those things like, back in the old days, my parents and grandparents would be like, well, I'd never buy anything over the phone or over the internet because, I'm like, well, you have a credit card, right? It doesn't matter. You could go in the store and it can still be taken, depending on where that data and, things are just getting more sophisticated, I guess, is
what's nuts to me is that the technology to deal and limit 95% of this fraud is in use in almost every other developed nation around the planet. And here in the US, we pay more in credit card fees than anybody else. Not like, when we're paying on average 2.3, 2.5%. In the rest of the planet, when you go to Europe and you use a credit card over there, it's not 2.3%. It's 0.2 to 0.3%. It's 10x less than what we pay here. And
why do
in
you
Europe,
think? Because of their systems, their security level?
So there's a few things that are different. So in Europe, if your credit card is stolen and used for fraudulent purposes, you as the owner of that card are responsible for those purchases until you report your card stolen. And even if your card is stolen, it's not nearly as easy in Europe to go out and use that card, because they have this third party, or not third party, but it's this security feature where for purchases over X amount, when you go to use your credit card at a dealership or a store, that you'll get a text message on your phone that says, do you want to approve this purchase? And you say yes or no. Yeah, if it's somewhere you do business with all the time, no big deal. But if it's the first time you've gone to a store, and
all those levels of authentication, and I know Europe was also the first, way earlier to come out with the handheld handsets, where they would come to your table or wherever, they would do the card swipe right in front of you, where it took a while. Now it's happening here quite a bit, but there they had 10 years ago or even more, they had those little handsets that they would bring out to you and do it right in front of you, even in stores or restaurants or whatever.
Yeah, if people don't travel internationally, if you're in Switzerland, we were there right before the pandemic, and you're at a restaurant and you go to pay for something, you got to hand them your credit card. No, we don't touch that. So I'm going to go get a little device. I'm going to come over here.
To do with that, here, well, you have to put it in. They bring the machine, and here you go. So, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of stuff is changing to this end. I think that 26 is going to see more tech and AI than ever before. Like you said earlier on something, AI is no longer a buzzword, right? It's there's a lot that dealers are going to have to learn how to, harness the power of AI, I guess you could say, because there's a lot of AI slop out there,
Ooh, my frustration right now is that when I'm talking to dealers, especially on the sales side, about how to use AI, and it's like everybody has this preconceived notion that AI is here to replace people. And I'm like, no, the reality is that your salespeople suck. And you might, if you got 10 salespeople, you might have a couple of good ones, but all the rest suck. And AI is not there to replace them. It's just to take what they say with bad grammar and bad punctuation, and the fact that the customer asks you 3 questions and you ignored every one of them and say, I'm going to take your crappy response and I'm going to make it marginally good so the customer has a better experience, and so the dealer's more likely to buy something. That's where we are with AI. It's not to replace people, but everyone's like, the robots are coming. So it's the, Skynet's here.
From a different side of the, obviously media side of it. Yeah, AI can do a lot, but it's still not replacing the people that have experience. You still have to tell it enough what to do and be able to, you still have to have eyes on it enough. I don't know that it's there, but it's also happened. AI has moved along a lot faster than I thought it would at first.
I got a paid account with ChatGPT, and I'm just blown away by how good it is. I mean, one of the most simple things that I show to dealers that are like, I never even thought of that, but it's great, is one of the big industry vendors that 1,200 of us deal with on a yearly basis sends us a new dealer agreement every year. And what I do, take the old dealer agreement, upload it to ChatGPT, upload the new one, and say, tell me what's different. And it's like, well, here's how your life is going to get way worse if you sign the new agreement. Here's the 8 bullet points that things are going to be a lot worse for you if you do this. And then, that used to take me 6 or 8 hours. And now it takes me 5 minutes to understand that here's what's different between the 2 documents. And am I going to do it or am I not? Luckily, we operate in Texas. So if we don't want to sign a new dealer agreement, we don't do it, because we get to operate on the old one. So,
have different rules, or whatever. Every state has different things, but those dealer agreement deals. And I've read, we've actually got an attorney that writes for us now, is doing some articles, and she deals a lot with some of these vendor agreements and things. So, and I know you've been pretty vocal about some of these vendors being like, hey, if they're not doing you any good, kick them out,
We did this really interesting exercise in our 20 group over the last couple of years, and it was looking at profitability by brand and using a couple little calculations. And a lot of times, like, a dealer would think that this brand in my dealership is carrying its outsized weight. But the reality is, when you go back through and do the numbers, you're like, wow, that's not even what I thought.
Not what I thought. Yeah.
No, it was incredibly eye-opening to dealers. And I've spent the last 5 years beating this drum about there's two kinds of companies we work with in the industry. We got business partners and we got vendors. And if a company is your business partner and they come to you and they say, hey, can you do this? And you go, well, let's talk about it and let's figure out, what works for both of us, and let's do that. If a company is a vendor, when they come to you and ask to do something, it's a very simple flow chart that you ask yourself. If I do this, does it benefit me more than them? And if the answer is no, we don't do it. So right. It's literally that simple. But I think dealers kind of struggle to understand the difference between a business partner and a vendor. And I'm not going to say that doing math is the only way to figure that out, but understanding how a dealer carries or how a manufacturer carries a dealer financially has been a big eye opener to a lot of dealers.
Yeah, no, and I think it's an important thing, especially as we move forward and where we have to look at every little nook and cranny, and hey, you want to stick with your most the ones that are helping you, not necessarily sucking the wind out of the sales. So
you can't. It's physically impossible to keep everybody happy. And so you got to pick and choose. And, I'll go outside of our industry and talk about it for a second. But if you look in farm and ag, I mean, there's three big players. You got John Deere, you got AGCO, and who has Massey Ferguson, and then you got Kubota. And if you take
in there, but
but if you take if you take what those three manufacturers say that they want to have in market share, every dealer would have to have like 160% market share, and so you literally, you can't make them all happy. So if you got 6 or 7 brands under your roof and you have got to make a decision on how are we going to operate for the next year, and you got to put a couple of them in timeout, so be it. Yeah. But make sure that when you do that, give your business to the business partners. And I think there's one really, I've talked about this till I'm blue in the face at this point in time. And here's the reality of what's happening in dealerships across the country is it's not owners, it's not GMs who are making a decision on what brand is going to be sold in the dealership. It's the salespeople. And the salespeople are making that decision based on how they're making that decision on how they get paid. Oh. And we have, there's a lot of good products out in the marketplace. If you want to buy a UTV with a cab on it, you can buy a Kawasaki, you can buy Polaris, you can buy a BRP, you can buy a CF Moto at this point in time.
Yeah.
They're all really, really good. But, and we as dealers are giving all of them floor space on our showroom. But if that customer comes in and they say, I want a Kawasaki or I want a Yamaha, salesperson should do what they're supposed to do, which is qualify the customer and make sure the customer is getting what they need, not what they want. But and I'm never going to promote that if a customer comes in and they say, here's the brand and the model that I want, and this is all that I want, that we try to move them onto something else. But 80% of those customers come into the dealership and they're like, hey, I just need something to work on my farm or feed the cows, or I want to take out the deer lease. What do you have? And what is the salesperson going to go to? Are they going to go to the vehicle that all said and done that the dealership is making 5 or 6 points on, and their commission on that is going to be a Mini and they're going to make $100? Or are they going to sell the vehicle that's $5,000 less that the dealership's making a 17-point margin on, and their commission on that is going to be $500 or $600. You tell me as a salesperson, what would you sell? And so it's not me. It's not the owner. It's not the GM. It's not your sales rep. It's the manufacturers who are making it so hard for us to make money that they are shooting themselves in the foot.
Yep. No, I 100% agree. That, you know, they think, oh, we made these great vehicles, but you're not going to make any money on it, you know. You know, maybe if they come back to buy some stuff or whatever add-ons, you know, of course you want to sell something you're gonna be able to make the money on, and not everybody needs the full, you know. Well, although a lot of those premium things make good margin, but below that, you know, are you going to need this name brand versus this maybe tier 2 level that makes better margin, that's a less expensive product for that customer that will probably be just as good for them and their needs. So it's like listening to the customer as much as anything too, you know.
I mean, if somebody's going out and racing on the weekend in a race series, then you know, they probably need the name brand with all the really good stuff on there. But, you know, if it's a father and son who are going to use that vehicle 3 or 4 times a year, they don't need that $40,000 whatever. I'm not dropping anybody under the bus here, but the $15,000 vehicle is probably all that person really needs. And the reality today is that, and anybody who's a dealer watching this knows who I'm talking about, but you've got a lot of products on the floor that you could sell the $15,000 tier 2 or the $40,000 tier 1, and the salesperson is going to make the same amount of money because the profitability as a percentage is so low on that premium vehicle because whatever reason, you know.
Yeah, right. And you know, because they wanted, you know, again, they're putting in, oh, it's a premium product, but they're not giving premium margin on it either, you know. So although some of these premium brands, there's, you know, and we will talk one real quick thing, and I'll let you go because I know you're busy and your voice is all burnt out from doing 5 podcasts.
No more podcasts today. I'm done.
But
until
you know, I just read that
tomorrow.
Kawasaki has overtaken Honda, and Harley is number 1 in the U.S. right now. Does that surprise you at all? I mean, I feel like Kawasaki has a great brand, a mix of products, you know, premium to, you know, and then with sport bikes and UTVs and side by sides and PWCs, you name it. They've got a pretty wide selection. But I guess I was a little surprised, and I'm thinking, well, Honda makes sense, but I wasn't sure Kawasaki would be there.
You know, I would say, I want to watch my words here a little bit. I'd say that the Kawasaki
I don't know if you carry Kawasaki in your store.
No, I do, and I'll come out and say it to everybody. When you talk about the total number of new vehicles that we sell, Kawasaki is the number 1 brand in our store today. Counter that, I think Kawasaki today is a very different company than they were 3 years ago, and you can parse that, you know, how things are in your dealership. I find it very interesting from talking to dealers across the country that there are some dealers who love Kawasaki, some dealers who are not in love with Kawasaki. And I think a lot of that is driven by the quality of the reps that are in the marketplace. I think that a good rep makes a lot of difference. I do believe that Kawasaki makes one of the best products in the marketplace when you're talking about reliability and how they take care of the customer after the sale. Is their UTV, and I'm not talking about the Ridge or the Terex, I'm talking about the Pro Mule, not the Legacy Mule. But when you're talking about the Pro Mule, that is a solid machine. And even today, when I get people that call me, you know, friends of the family and all that, they're like, what should I buy? I typically say Pro Mule. It's not the fastest. It's not the best suspension, but it's got a 3-year warranty on it. And you literally, all you'll probably ever have to do to that is the maintenance that's outlined in the owner's manual. It's a really, really good machine. And then Kawasaki kind of has the whole line covered. You know, they don't really play in the watercraft segment anymore, but they got small bikes, they got sport bikes. They've supported the industry on an entry level that got ignored for a decade. And, we didn't have a lot of entry level bikes for a long time. And
Yeah.
now
and
we
they
do.
Yeah.
Yeah. They got, they don't really play in the cruiser segment too much anymore. Not the big
Not
twins.
so much, but Vulcan, I guess, is somewhat, but that seems like but I just thought it interesting in looking at the shift of things and where markets are shifting. I'm always kind of paying attention to what is moving, what's not, what's the sentiment, what are people gravitating to. And obviously utility, Pro Mule, I mean they kind of invented the side by side. So I feel like on the utility side, and if the market is really leaning towards utility lately because that seems to be what moves. They do well.
They are, and I think Kawasaki is doing a lot of things right. Do I think that they're doing everything right? No, by a long shot. And if some executive from Kawasaki wants to sit down with me for a couple hours, let me know when.
Yeah.
Happy, but just as long as it's open dialogue. I would love to talk, love to kind of tell you my thoughts, but it's some manufacturers seem to want to talk and some don't.
Right.
But what is interesting though is when you look at Kawasaki, yes, they're winning in America, but
they're not
winning
everywhere else.
No, they're not.
Globally, no.
No, and so I don't know what they need to win everywhere. I mean, America's kind of
we're a weird little I think not, I wouldn't say a niche market, but in some ways when you look at other markets around the world that are selling millions of units, granted they're much lower priced units, we're kind of the king of the premium, us in Europe, maybe Germany and Italy. We're a much smaller, what do we move? How many units you think? I mean, with side by sides, it's hard to say because no one gives you those numbers, but we kind of know. I've got insight onto about how many of those units move, but it's still not that. It's just a fraction of what moves in other places, No,
and historically, I mean, we've sold odd vehicles here. I mean, this big bore style. We really are the only company in the world where a first time rider can come in and buy a Ninja H2 at 230 horsepower. You
can be a 16-year-old kid and come in and you don't need any train. We'll sell you this bike here and you go out and kill yourself on it. But
yeah, we truly believe in natural selection here in this country. It ought to be the 11th Amendment. We bring in natural selection.
Yeah,
you can be as stupid as you want to be. You can extract yourself from the gene pool.
You don't wear a helmet everywhere either. So
it's really nuts.
It is.
Yeah, it's really really crazy. But I like most of what Kawasaki's. What they're doing.
No, I think they've done a good job. And I think going into 26, like you said, it's going to be kind of, you think flat. Is there any area that you think a dealer like AI or some, AI seems to be like the catch all, but what is going to be what do you think is your prediction of what will be the a big thing to focus on for
so if I can give dealers one tip, and done this 300-400 times at this point in time, and I said that the industry is going to be flat next year, but that doesn't mean that your business has to be flat. It means that you just got to be better than the competition, and you got to figure out how to take market share from them. And if a dealer gets one thing out of this podcast, it's go to gmail.com and create a new Gmail account with a real sounding name that doesn't identify you in it. And then go to your dealer website and make sure that you write that Gmail address down correctly and your password correctly, because like 30% of dealers forget it by the time they get to their website, or put the wrong one in. Go to your website and submit a lead to your own dealership, and submit a decent lead, but ask a question or two, and then see how bad the response is. And I just hope that there's 10 dealers across the country out of 100 that do this, that go, wow, we really, really suck, because dealers are spending what do salespeople need? We need more leads. We need more leads. You got to spend more money on marketing. You got to get more people to say they want to buy stuff from us. The reality is 90% of dealers are getting all the leads they need. They just need to do a better job with them. They just need to train their salespeople on how to follow up on those leads. If you got to use AI to improve that process, I don't care what it takes. I bet you that half the dealers in this country could spend 50% less on marketing than they do this year. And if they spent $10,000 to $20,000 a year all in on digital lead training, they'd sell more vehicles next year. Yeah. I have no doubt. If you've seen what I've seen shopping 300 or 400 dealers, it literally hurts. I wasn't gray before I started doing that. It's that bad. No, I was like Elvis, black hair.
I've done a few of those shopper things myself where I just go into their site, ask a question, and the responses are very, very mixed, Some are really good, but most of them are pretty bad,
Yeah. The problem is that most dealers don't even know what good looks like. And when we've done this little exercise where we get dealers to grade their own leads, and it's always funny. Kind of the joke I did in one of my presentations is, I asked this dealer to grade their own response, and they're like, it's a 7. And I was like, yeah, I think it's a 2. And so, we debated for a little bit and we argued about it, and then we met in the middle and called it 2. I was like, no, it's literally, and that dealer wanted to argue with me until we got around the room, and about 15 dealers into it, somebody read out a response to a lead that they sent in, and everybody is like, oh, wow, that's what good sounds like. And they didn't know it because they've never seen it before.
Yeah.
It was the unicorn response. It was like, wow, I've never seen one of those before. It sparkled and it was good, and it made me want to go out and buy one.
Yeah.
But until you've seen what good looks like, don't think that you can grade your own leads and go, yeah, it's pretty good.
That was okay.
No. If you think it's pretty good, it's probably really bad.
Yeah. No, I think that's really, really good advice to end with, is like, go test your own dealership and then test a few others. Try to see what good looks like, Yeah.
If you can learn what good looks like, and then you can coach your salespeople to do that. One of the exercises we do is we take a lead and we put it on a printed sheet of paper. And in our sales meeting, we hand that to all the salespeople. And we say, respond to this lead, but write down what your response is. Because when 5 minutes from now, we're going to go around and everybody's going to read off what they wrote. Because if you do it verbally, then everybody who responds kind of builds on what everybody else has done. And you need to know what your baseline is.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Well, hey, Mark, this has been great. Really appreciate you coming on. And I hope you have a very happy holidays, happy New Year, happy Merry Christmas, and everything else. So until the new year, will you be at AIM Expo?
I will be there making a small appearance for one day. So, yeah, we're going to go there. And I got a wedding on one side of that and TMDA meeting on the other. So it was kind of like, how do I fit all this in and not have my wife kill me? Although she's got another reason to kill me now or two more. So.
Well, hopefully she won't see this right away. So,
Yeah, if our internet goes out in our neighborhood for the next couple of months, then that's probably why.
Right. We'll have to send down a search party for you. So, all right, buddy. Well, hey, good talking to you. We'll see you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for doing this.
Yeah.
If you like this podcast, please like, share, and subscribe. We also invite you to connect with us on powersportsbusiness.com.